Hi, I'm James Todd, the Assistant Superintendent and Vice President of Student Services at Sierra College. I'm so pleased to provide a quick welcome to this event, which has been led by an amazing group of faculty and classified professionals who drove it to fruition. Without a doubt, it focuses on one of our most important social issues that requires more inquiry and attention, specifically our landscape of disability and our history of ableism. How do we imagine, experience, understand, and occupy our bodies and minds in our social lives? How are our perceptions of normalcy caught up in the politics and poetics of how we value each other in our social systems? In 1990, President George Herbert Walker Bush signed the Americans with Disabilities Act into law, which came after a long struggle. While a great step forward, we still face great challenges, especially when it comes to equity on our campuses. For example, a National Center for College Students with Disabilities 2021 report concluded that undergraduate college students with disabilities have lower graduation rates compared to their peers without disabilities. For instance, using wide-ranging data, the report shows that only 40.4% of students with disabilities who started attending four-year public or private nonprofit colleges in 2011 graduated with a bachelor's degree from the same institution within 6 years, as compared to 56.7% of students without disabilities. It doesn't take too long to get from the inequities, as well as the histories of disability, to those of race, and even those of class, gender, and sexuality. And so, during a semester where Sierra College has committed to transforming our campus for Black success, we might start to also consider the parallels and intersections of ableism and racism, not as separate projects, but as deeply intertwined in their emergence in colonial contexts, capitalist worlds, and modern nation states. We may well find a common agenda together as we consider our equity work ahead. I hope that today's event is galvanizing as we listen, learn, and share. It's a time we can consider, what can inclusiveness mean at Sierra College? What might help us deconstruct some of the systems that produce inequalities in access and completion for our students? How might we harness critical tools and practices that can help us better embrace modes of belonging? Thank you for coming. I look forward to our time together today and to our collaborative work ahead as a community.
Welcome to part 2 of Radical Inclusion, a Disability Revolution. Sierra College is honored to welcome international disability rights activist extraordinaire, Judith Heumann. You met Judy in Crip Camp, but you may well have seen her in action during her TED Talk with Trevor Noah, on talk shows or the news, or perhaps even when Ali Stoker portrayed her in Drunk History segment on the passing of Section 504. As a leader, Judy's impact in the United States in creating disability legislation and notions of liberation cannot be overstated. Judy's work has global importance and includes the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the International Human Rights Treaty of the United Nations. 2 presidential appointments took Judy to Washington. During the Clinton era, she spent 8 years as the Assistant Secretary, Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services in the U.S. Department of Education. For the Obama administration, She was the special advisor for international disability rights at the U.S. Department of State. Judith has authored 2 books, Being Human, an unrepentant memoir of a disability rights activist, and, for the younger set, Rolling Warrior, the incredible, sometimes awkward, true story of a rebel girl on wheels who helped spark a revolution. These books can be found in our library or at a bookstore near you. Judy also serves on many nonprofit boards, including the American Association of People with Disabilities and the Human Rights Watch Board. Learn more by listening to Judy's regular program, The Human Perspective. She can be found on her YouTube channel as well as on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. In conversation with Judy will be Sierra College student Victoria Miller, a feminist disability rights activist since 1998. Victoria is also a mother, partner, daughter, friend, and grandmother.
I was 27 when I became disabled due to a ruptured blood vessel in my head. I had 2 small children. I was a single parent, going to school, working, and my life changed in about an hour. Everything in my life, I lost my job, my apartment. Anyways, I spent probably good 7-8 years in a wheelchair, and I hid from the world. I was very embarrassed about the way I sounded, the way I looked. I hid. I've recently learned overcoming my disability denies part of who I am, so I no longer want to overcome. And then I watched Crip Camp. Felt great. And then I felt real connected to the film because I was also born in Berkeley in the 70s. And so I felt, oh, this is about me, kind of. And then Judith said something that has profoundly changed my entire path in life now. And she said, as long as I have to be thankful for handicapped toilets, how can I ever be equal? And it lit something in me that had long ago been put out, a fire that I put out. And I never realized that. I never really thought about the fact that, why am I being thankful for something other people don't even think about? I can't be equal. I can't be equal. And I no longer want to ride out the storm. I kind of want to be the storm. And watching the film made me realize how far we still have to go. And I want to be in that front line.
Along with Victoria, we welcome disability rights activist Josh Sauma, a Sierra College Business Administration major. Currently, Josh is a Disabled Student Service Program employee, and he plans to transfer to Sacramento State.
You know, I grew up pretty independent, played sports my whole life. And I was always like a go-getter, since I was young. I went to Wood Creek High School in Roseville, so I grew up, out here pretty much, Rockland area. I was fortunate enough to play football at Sierra College after high school. I played rugby shortly. It was and then the accident happened, and the accident, wasn't wearing my seatbelt, and I'm lucky to be alive. Everything changed, just in a blink of an eye. It happened so fast. I was pronounced dead at the scene because I wasn't wearing my seatbelt, so I was ejected through the driver window. And I woke up 5 days later, and it took some time for me to realize really what happened. How like the impact, you know, that I wasn't going to be able to walk, that I wasn't going to be able to play sports ever again, you know, do things that I used to do, snowboard, skateboard, all those things like were just gone, you know. And so for the longest time I was embarrassed, you know. I didn't like the way my clothes fit. Like, it was impossible to find any clothes. You know, I didn't want to go anywhere. You realize who your real friends are, you know, and when something like that happens, because, you know, they stop calling, you know. Like in Crip Camp, you know, it showed me that, like, just a group of kids, you know, who all have something in common, like when they came together, it was just like a family. It was like they instantly knew what each other were going through, so they were able to connect on in ways that they're not able to do on their own, you know, when they're in public around people who don't have a disability, people who, you know, are always looking like twice at them, looking back, you know, seeing what's wrong with them, or just because they're different. You know, I would have never, before my accident, would have never gotten involved with, you know, so like, not that I had anything against people with disabilities, but I just didn't understand, you know. I wasn't able to connect with them, you know, like they're able to connect with each other. And so, you know, Crip Camp showed me that, like, a group of kids who all have a disability were able to come together and, like, you know, change the course of history for people with disabilities, you know. And I think that's just amazing. You know, it showed me that, you know, some of them were able to go on and have kids, you know, even with the disability. And that was always one of my biggest fears, was if I was going to be able to have kids, you know. And like, so like they just, that film showed me that anything's possible. You know, I'm able to accomplish anything as long as I am surrounded by people who understand, love me, and support me. So
our facilitator today is Anya Stanger. Anya is teaching faculty in Sierra's Women and Gender Studies program, and she teaches in the Conflict Studies program at Syracuse University. Anya is a social movements researcher with a PhD from Syracuse. Her book, Incarcerated Resistance: How Identity, Gender, and Privilege Shaped the Experiences of America's Nonviolent Activists, was published this January.
So the thing that really stayed with me about this film was the impact of going to summer camp and being really truly included and getting to do all the things that kids want to do. And they had a lot of fun. But in the longer term, they went home to their schools and communities, and they realized these places differently where they couldn't do the same thing. And that showed up as maybe injustice or unfair, but certainly as something that could be changed. And so summer camp was really fun, but when we telescope that out, we see that the impact of that was that these people's lives were changed, and as a result, they became this group of activists who changed not only policy in the United States, but people's lives all over the world. So that this impact was global.
A quote from Judy's memoir, Being Human. Everything I've done in my life, I never would have been able to do on my own.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this event. Welcome to this incredible jumpstart, this inaugural event, the formal launching for Sierra College of really thinking about issues of accessibility and access, fairness, justice, and inclusion here at Sierra College. We are so delighted to have all of you here, and we are delighted, as you can imagine, to have this brilliant and powerful group of panelists here to focus and inspire our understandings and our actions, as well as to shape the needed institutional change here at Sierra College. So we're so glad you've come. We're so glad you've chosen to spend some of your precious time with us here today. Thank you. My name is Anya Stanger. I'm a white woman with light brown hair. I'm in my 40s. I'm wearing a turquoise sweater. I have a silky scarf on, and I will be facilitating this panel today. I encourage all of you to submit questions if you have them, as you have them, to the chat function at the bottom of your screen. We have some people on our in our work group who will be monitoring the chat, and they'll be sending along questions to me to ask. And our panelists have really asked for questions from attendees. So don't be shy and ask whatever you're wondering about, and we will get to as many of your questions as we can. To begin today, I have a question, and I have a question for all of our panelists. And I will begin with Victoria Miller and then move on to Josh and then to Judy. And my question is maybe simple. If there was one thing that you wish everyone could know or understand, what would that be?
Well, it seems like a simple question, but it's really not. My answer would be I wish everyone realized that different doesn't mean bad. It's differences in flowers or trees or dog breeds is kind of what makes America and the world around us beautiful. And my daughter said something to me this morning relating to this, and she said, differences are a gift in the way that they give us the ability to appreciate things we may not have otherwise been able to understand and see its beauty. And that meant a lot coming from her because she was 3 when I became disabled. So her perspective is kind of what I'm hoping to get across to the world. Different doesn't mean bad. Oh, I'm 50. I have long brown hair, little bit of gray, and I use a walker and wear glasses sometimes when I want to see.
Thank you, Victoria. Josh, are you with us?
Yes.
There you are.
Yeah. Hello, my name's Josh. I'm 28 actually. I'm wearing a hat, a black shirt. And yeah, I'm excited to be here. I think my answer to the question would be as simple as like a discrimination doesn't define who like that person is, shouldn't separate them from anybody else. So, that's my answer to that.
Great. Simple. Judy, on to you.
I never have one thing to say, but I'll try. First of all, thank you for inviting me to be with you all. I'm really excited about this. And I'm also excited to learn that Anya is from Syracuse University because they do great work at Syracuse University. And I'm really glad that you're now helping here to make sure that some of the great work that's gone on in Syracuse for decades will also be something which can become a part of the work that you're all engaged with. I am a 74-year-old disabled woman. I have brown hair, which comes to about my shoulders. I have gray, but I get rid of it. I dye it. And I have highlights in my hair that someone told me to get when I was going to the Oscars for Crip Camp in May of last year. And people love them, so I keep getting them every couple of months. I'm wearing red glasses. I have on a kind of reddish lipstick, and I have on a red turtleneck, and we're in the foyer of my husband's in my apartment. And we have a lot of pictures on the wall of family and postcards. And behind me is my office, which also is our dining room table. And my 2 colleagues, Kylie and Kalila, are working there. And we have a multicolored tablecloth. One thing that I think we should be focusing on is the continual growth and nurturing and development of the disability rights movement. That bringing the breadth of the 60 million disabled people in the US and the 1 billion plus disabled people in the world brings visible and invisibly disabled people together, people from all racial backgrounds, ethnic, religious, sexual orientations, etc. People who became disabled when they were born, people who become disabled when they're older, people who are becoming disabled as a result of war and conflict, pollution, etc. So that to me is what I believe is the strongest asset that we have. I believe our movement has been getting stronger since I was born, when there really wasn't a movement, because people have finally recognized that we face discrimination and that the solution to this discrimination may vary, but that the common thread that we all have is our disabilities. Disability to me is a powerful word. I don't shy away from it, just like I don't want women to shy away from the word women or Black people or Latinos or Jews or Christians or Muslims or Sikhs or whoever. I want us to own the totality of who we are. I don't want to be using euphemistic words anymore. For me, it's either a disabled person or a person with a disability, and that's it.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Really lovely, different responses, but I see a lot of resonance between what the three of you said. So that I think is sort of perfect, just as it is. My next question is just for Josh and Victoria, and you can answer, and whoever jumps in first, and it doesn't matter at all. And that question is, and I think we were so touched as people who got to see this film rather than be in it, Judy. And one of the things that the film does so beautifully is to show the power of belonging, of what it means to be vitally included. So Josh and Victoria, because our group, our radical inclusion group, what we want to do is change Sierra College, right? So what would it mean for Sierra College to be a place that is truly inclusive for you and for all people with disabilities? And then think about also, if you will, what are the benefits of creating this truly inclusive space?
Josh?
Yeah, I'll go real quick. I think, to the first part, it would be like a place where everyone with disabilities isn't like held back or slowed down by, discrimination or separation or technology. Where like they have this, where people with disabilities have the same possibilities to achieve just as much greater things as people without disabilities can, and there are times where, things like technology or being uncomfortable, can slow someone with a disability down, from experience. I've seen it. So, to the second part, the benefits of it would be, like I said, where like people with disabilities don't feel uncomfortable anymore, and they're excited to show up to school, rather than dropping classes because they didn't feel welcome, or something happened in class that made them uncomfortable, or I know when a disability, like when somebody goes through a traumatic injury, or and the disability is new to them, there's so many things running through their head that like the last thing they want to worry about is a bunch of people staring at them when they roll into a class, or just yeah. So I think the benefits of it would just be like where people with disabilities finally feel like they're in a place where they're welcome, where people actually can understand they're not different, that they're just like them. So
Yeah, it's pretty simple what you're asking for, Josh. I mean, you're asking to remove barriers and to have people feel like they belong. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. That seems like what Judy fought for, right? Yeah. And hypothetically achieved a long time ago. So we're still in the work.
Yeah.
Still got to make this happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Victoria, do you have some thoughts?
I'm going to piggyback off what Josh is saying and get a little more detailed. and deal with structural inequality. And I feel like part of crib camp that made me feel like part of crib camp was everyone literally took the same paths everywhere, not just in their minds, but literally it was everyone took the same path. I was recently at a restaurant where they took out the stairs and they put a ramp. Why have two when you could just have one and we could all use it? Nobody has to go down to the basement to get to the library. Nobody, and I realize that we can't change all the stairs in the world, but I'm kind of wondering if from now on we could just eliminate stairs. If we could all just go down the same path, if I could leave this world for my great grandchildren who may or may not be mobility impaired, wouldn't it be neat if they never had to see a stair? They never had to physically think about, okay, I have to get to class half an hour early because it's upstairs and I have to. I know it's a little asking a little much, but I'm just kind of hoping that I can pave a future that is equal. Same path.
I love that. It reminds me, there's this mantra in the disability rights movement for years and years, which is nothing without us, nothing about us without us. And it has been, I read that it's been sort of shortened to nothing without us.
I think
right?
that, and I think that what it gains is a comfortable environment for everybody there. Comfortable, where there's nothing more inclusive than a ramp. It includes everyone.
Right. Universal design that is truly universal. Josh, do you have thoughts about that?
I honestly, no, I don't know if it's because like I was so used to stairs, or like the separation of both of them from because I've only been in the chair for 6 years now, so I would have never thought about that, but I honestly think that's a very good point. I think everyone should just feel like there's no difference, so I think what she's asking, I mean, I don't think it's that big of an ask. I think it's possible, at least from here on out, to make it to where you're not separating the two. I think that's a good point. So that was good, Victoria.
Thank you. Judy, I don't want to let a minute go by without letting you pipe in if you want to. So even though I didn't ask this question to you, do you have any thoughts you want to share about it?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Well, my question was really about what would it mean for Sierra College to be a place that's inclusive, and then the benefits of creating an inclusive space. But I'm also wondering if you have thoughts about what Victoria and Josh said.
Yeah. So I would say removing barriers, and now we're discussing disability, but you can't remove barriers on a college campus for one group without impacting the entire community. So when I think about the issue of disabled people not feeling comfortable on campus, dealing with things that are not accessible, where students are afraid to speak up, where staff and faculty may also be measuring what they should say and when they should say it, because they're worried about issues like promotion or tenure. You're wanting to remove all of those barriers, of which, Victoria and Josh were discussing. Additionally, disability plus race, disability plus sexual orientation, disability plus whatever the other isms may be. None of these things are going to happen quickly. But I think one of the major issues is that, does the leadership of the institution provide guidance and direction, which makes it clear that in the blueprint they have for the next 3 to 10 years, one of their clear objectives is to enable all students, including those with disabilities, to be able to see the school as one where people want to come. And they want to come because the education is high quality and because people can bring their whole selves into the school as a student, as a staff person, as a faculty member. And that it is an institution of learning and debate. And I think that's very important because issues that Victoria and Josh and you were discussing, I think we need to recognize that the absence of disability in media is one of the most pervasive reasons why we are not seeing the inclusion that we're all striving for. The other day, my husband turned on TV randomly in the morning and it went to public television, children's programming. And I looked just for like 5 to 8 minutes and I saw it's all animation. It was a program that was focusing on a family who was Latino, which was great. Beautiful colors, beautiful music, full of stairs. No one with a visible disability, no mention of anyone with an invisible disability. I think this is another issue that we need to be thinking about. You know, it's one thing for people to be able to see those of us who have disabilities, but many people have invisible disabilities, and we need to look at ways of making sure that their messages and who they are and what they want is very central. But the reason I mentioned what I saw on PBS is because it's a program for kids 4 to 8 years old. And you had all these wonderful aspects of it. But that, and it was the end of a program going to another one. Again, great colors, great animation, every different kind of person, and no one with a disability. That message is what we continue to see and hear. I think, you know, for me, because I'm 74, I've seen some major changes that have gone on in media as it pertains to people of color, people who are not straight. You see advertisements now where people are married, different racial backgrounds, where gay people are visibly in the ad, etc. Once in a while, you'll see a disabled person or like this. Yeah, so we can belabor this. It's not belaboring. I think we need to discuss it. But I feel really as disability is being brought into the campus, it also needs to be definitely seen as a part of the other changes that students, faculty, and staff are wanting to make, and that disability is a meaningful part of this.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that. And I think when we're talking about any marginalized group, right, issues of representation are always fundamental. They're always central to it. And I think for the radical inclusion work group, this group at Sierra College, who's really thinking about making Sierra a more inclusive space, keeping that front and center is important. Who and what and how are we representing, and whose voices are included, all of that.
Academia needs to be making sure that disability is a meaningful part of what people are learning.
Absolutely.
I think the accessibility and technology in the physical environment is unfortunately something that should have been being done for decades and hasn't. But I don't think we can look at it and not also look at how are we going to make changes. Whatever the majors are that are on the campus, disability needs to be integrated into those, as well as there are no courses apparently on disability studies, let alone a minor or a major. And those are things that also have to be happening simultaneously.
Right. Right. And one of the things we've been talking about is we need to really ramp up what we've been calling literacy, right? Our literacy as a campus community around this, because there is currently a real illiteracy around these issues.
I think the word knowledge really needs to be put in, because that's what we're looking for. We want people to become knowledgeable, and they become knowledgeable in part through literacy. I believe very much in literacy, but I do very much believe that words like leadership and knowledge, commitment, empowerment, these are words that need to be integrated, not just in the area of disability, but that's the ultimate objective of an institution of higher education. Ensuring that students who are coming there are learning so that they can be effective leaders in their communities of tomorrow.
Absolutely. Way to keep it real, Judy. Right. No hiding behind pretty words here. What are we actually talking about? Absolutely. Okay. There's a question from the group that is for Victoria and Josh, which is, do you have any specific examples to share of a particular barrier at Sierra College that maybe you've hampered your learning or you felt like actually got in the way of you being successful? Do you have a specific story you can tell us? I know that's a bit putting you on the spot, but
I have quite a few, actually. One of them is, sorry for jumping in there, Josh. One of them is our big, beautiful library building that I am currently sitting in. It's gorgeous. When you wheel to the front, you're staring at this massive set of stairs. So you can either turn left and go up the ramp that's got, I believe it's 7 or 8 switchbacks. So if it's raining, that's not really an option. I walk really slow, and I physically can't run. So, or if you know about it, you can go down to the basement, and there's a ramp around the other side of the building, and it brings you to the basement where you look at the elevator saying, in case of fire, use stairs. So I really want to go up and study in our gorgeous library, but I've gotten afraid of being in that, that threshold bias, being in a place where you don't know if you can get out of. It's definitely hindered my education. That's why I'm on the 25-year plan, because I keep not only structural barriers, I've had life issues, but that's a major one. I love our library, and please forgive me if I'm saying the wrong thing here, but it's just, why did we put all this money into a building that is clearly not inclusive?
When was the building built?
10 years ago.
No way.
And it just doesn't feel safe, right? That's what you're saying. You don't feel safe.
Well, I don't mean to say bigger issue, but a huge issue is what you're asking, Victoria, sorry, which is a building built 10 years ago is a new building. And why is a new building built like this?
I get it. I mean, it's gorgeous building, but I'm afraid to go to the 4th floor. But UC Berkeley does an evacuation process that includes disabled people that are in the building. So if you work there, this is my understanding. If you work there, it's in your job title to assist disabled people in the case of fire, whether you got to grab a wheelchair. Now, I'm little. Somebody can throw me over their back. I don't have a big, heavy chair. A lot of people do. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Josh, are you ever scared of going in the library?
Yeah, I see it all the time, but Yeah, no, you make a great point. I'm with you on that one.
I mean, this is really a separate discussion. Um, Fire safety and evacuation, very important, especially in California with fires and earthquakes and all the other things. But there should be evac chairs by every stairwell, and not for just disabled people, but for people who may acquire their disabilities during whatever's happening. And I would imagine that the universities have a plan for evacuation. They probably have team captains on floors who have responsibility to get people off the floor out of the building. But I've worked in a number of larger institutions, and one of the things that I always pushed for was getting these evac chairs whose purpose is to help people like us get out of the building, and that there would be people on each floor who are trained on how to assist you onto the chair and get out.
Yeah, that's what I want to happen here.
So what we really are hearing in this conversation is that the structural barriers, the very basic barriers at Sierra College are still very real, still very much impact. And as few as, a decade ago, were not obviously not even front and center, but really in people's minds as something that was so important. And there may very well actually be some of these plans, but they're not communicated to people, which makes them not useful. And so that's, another hole in our what we're doing is maybe around communication and knowledge for the resources that are there, if they are there, or if they're not, they're sure low hanging fruit to address. Judy, I have a question for you, which is more about how moving the conversation a bit, because we really want to take advantage of the fact that you are this incredible activist who has made things happen in this country. So we want to sort of glean all the wisdom we can from you. So as someone who's been in the struggle for the long haul, what do you know about how social and legal, cultural, political change happens that we can learn from you and apply in our own lives as activists and allies, but also as power holders within the various institutions that we belong to, and specifically Sierra College, of course?
So I think this is a very important question, which obviously I plus many other people could spend days and days talking about. But I think it is another reason why activism is something that students should be learning about on college campuses. Activism in the area of disability, activism. I mean, if you look at California in particular, looking at activism in the area of the farm workers union, learning about what they did in order to begin to get migrant workers and others appropriate wages for the work that they were doing. Looking at how the disability movement, and you see this in Crip Camp, how we aligned ourselves with other movements, because I think that's one very important part of what we need to be successful. So as I was saying earlier, the ability to enable disabled people to feel proud of who they are, not to feel that by identifying they're going to be more stigmatized, not to be embarrassed about who they are. I can talk a little bit right now about things that we've done in the movement, but really I think what people need to know is it's not that we did nor that we are, because it's not a thing of the past. It's something that is continuing to evolve. And I think bringing this forward, for example, to today, where some of us are working really hard on issues around voting rights. And this is a very big issue within the civil and human rights communities, organizations or umbrella groups like the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights are very involved in the whole issue of voter suppression. And then we have organizations like the American Association of People with Disabilities that have a program called Rev Up and Rev Up is specifically focused on helping enable disabled people to understand what their rights are, to be fighting for policies that are not restricting disabled people's ability to vote. That's a modern day issue, unfortunately. And I think when looking at how successful have we been in really getting disability to be seen as a part of the voting rights struggle. This week, Stacey Abrams, who's running for governor in Georgia and has been very involved in voting rights, as well as inclusive on disability, did a 30-minute presentation focusing on disability and disabled people as a part of her campaign. That to me is a very, very important event. It really shows that slowly disabled people are becoming more a part of mainstream efforts. Rev Up, which is the name of the program I was mentioning, is in a number of states like Texas and Georgia and Florida and others, and it is a nonpartisan program. Their concern is not who you vote for, but that if you wish to vote, you get the right to vote, and that your disability and potentially poverty plus disability is not a reason that you're not able to vote. And the only reason I said potential around poverty, obviously, poor people have more difficulty jumping through the hoops to get the various things that some states are requiring. But even if you have money, it may be difficult to jump through these hoops also. So it's basically, we have to be fighting against this. So in modern day terms, we're looking at issues like voting. We're looking at educating candidates and saying to candidates, if you are running for office, if you look at the last election in 2020, every one of the Democratic candidates put a policy paper out on disability. That was like unheard of previously. And we see this going on at state and local levels also, where local groups are, you can be nonpartisan. This is what I think is very important. If a group wants to put together a set of questions that they're going to give to people who are running for office, and those questions are just on disability or they're inclusive of underrepresented populations, that's nonpartisan. If people then want to take the responses and use it in a partisan way, that's fine. But you can do a lot of work in a nonpartisan way to basically show, as the disability community and the disability community of diversity, that you are interested and you expect that a candidate running for office will be respectful, will answer these questions, and will do it in a timely way, just like they do for others. So I think that's really what's happening today, is becoming stronger based on what we did decades ago and kept doing. If you look at the 504 demonstrations, those efforts were like a 5-year effort, learning about regulations, learning how to comment on regulations, going to meetings, engaging people, and then ultimately the demonstrations and the sit-in, which was not a very planned, the sit-in itself was not very planned. Everything up to the sit-in was very planned, but the sit-in itself was pretty spontaneous. But the work that we had been doing with local organizations enabled us to pretty quickly put things in place so that we would be able to stay in the building for an untold amount of time. And I think that's really, what are we always looking at? What is the message? What are we trying to get? How are we informing people? How are we enabling people to see that they are a part of the solution, and what role they can play? And that was another thing then. And now, getting people engaged, making people feel that they make a difference. And, for me, and then I'll stop, but one of the issues, I think this is a general problem in the United States, that we as a country do not really understand our political system. And by that, I mean, most people do not know how someone becomes a member of the Supreme Court, or how someone becomes a member of the state court, and what do those courts do? And why is this important? This is important because if you look, for example, at the Supreme Court now has 9 people, 6 of whom are conservative, 1 who kind of is moderate pending, but only 3 people, in my perspective, that we can count on to do the right thing when cases come before the court. And so we've seen in less than 6 months, 2 cases that almost went to the Supreme Court that were only stopped because the disability community has become more powerful, more dispersed, and was able to bring together a diverse group of people. The 2 cases were CVS and the LA Community College District. Both of these were looking at bringing cases before the Supreme Court that undeniably the court would have ruled against disabled people on the issue of disparate impact. And the issue of disparate impact is, do you have to intentionally discriminate against Victoria Miller? If the building didn't have a ramp and Victoria Miller couldn't get in, and they didn't mean to discriminate against Victoria Miller, they would say that Victoria Miller has no standing to sue them. What 504 in the ADA says is, no, that's not right. You need these standards. You need to have these things in place so that you can ensure that this form of discrimination isn't going to occur. It doesn't deal with other issues like individual employment discrimination, but it deals with big issues and individual issues. So had the community not been really able to jump in quickly, the CVS case would have gone before the court, and there would have been an LA Community College District District case that would have paralleled the CVS case, thus being able to bring forward the voices of these big companies saying, no, we can't be held to the standards that we argue they should be held to.
Thank you for that. As a social movement scholar, your words are like music to my ears, right? That really the founding first step is to learn about social movements, to learn how social change that has occurred. I want to say that I totally agree with you. But what I want people to learn about now is your senator, a U.S. senator, will be voting for judges, federal judges and Supreme Court justices. And they sit on these benches for life. Do you care what their view is? Should you care what your candidates are expressing? What is their position on disabled kids going to school? What is their position on making Sierra College accessible? What if they think, no, it's not really an issue? You're the person running in your congressional seat. What do they feel about disparate impact? Will they be supporting you, or will they be a part of a case that would say, no, we don't want to be held to that standard?
That's how history is made. So yes, it's important for people to learn about the past, but I think people need to learn about today. Why do you need to register to vote? Why do you need to understand these issues? Because if you're not voting and you don't understand these issues, you can either consciously or unconsciously be putting people in positions where they will absolutely rule against everything we're discussing. So, I mean, my feeling really is activism today, absolutely looking at what's happened in the past. But we know what's happened in the recent past. We know that. We know the Trump appointees. We clearly know that everything we are discussing now, they are not in support of. I don't mean to generalize, but I don't think I am, because I think if you look at some of the rulings that they've come out with, not just on disability, I mean, even the rulings that came out in the last 10, 12 years, allowing untold amounts of money to be utilized for elections. You know, if you're rich and you have money, you put money into people's campaigns. Previously, the law that they struck down put limits on that, you know, and none of us on this call have the amount of money or influence that some other people have. Their views should be influential. I'm not at all talking about suppression of views at all. I have no problem debating anybody on any of these issues. But when they put in huge amounts of money that basically keep people from running and suppress, that's not right. And that people need to learn about now.
Right, right. So what you said was, right, learn these histories and then learn how they matter today. And
no, what I'm saying is, look at what the major issues are.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. And what I want to sort of also add to this conversation is, I think of Sierra faculty and staff as people with power in our communities, right? We are leaders. We are
influence.
We have influence. And what you're saying is, right, it doesn't have to be partisan. We're not talking about do this, do that. We're saying understand the issues, know what you're fighting for, and then make sure you're following up. And sometimes this looks like something that's not very, it's not very sexy, right? To think about, to follow these policies or to look at, but that's actually where the stuff happens. And so we need to get involved, and we need to see ourselves as people whose opinions about these things matter, and that we can actually make changes. Right? Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. I have one more question, and I think we have time to get to it in our last 5 minutes. As expected, our hour has flown by. So for all of us to think about, we're all busy, and people are good people. So what's one thing we can do, these good, busy people, today or every day, that can actually make a positive difference? So let's go, Victoria, Josh, and then Judy.
I didn't know quite what direction to go with this, so I went with the one that applies to me. And I believe I am one of these everyday good people. And I also have a lot of children in my life. And I've been told by their parents that my comfort I have with my own self allows their children to be comfortable around me, and therefore around other people with speech issues or walking aids or any global issues. So I for my part in that, I'm going to feel good about myself and give everyone else around me to feel good about disabled people wherever they are. That's my part.
I love that, Victoria. Thanks. Josh?
Yeah, for me, I think just trying to be like because I feel like there's a lot of people from Sierra College here, so I think for me it just comes down to like trying to understand the people with disabilities, or trying to remain like open-minded, that that things for them may be a little bit more difficult. So, give it a little bit more time. I want to share this real quick and I'll be fast, but, a friend of mine, he struggled from an aneurysm shortly, like not long ago. And, he's a quad now, so he has to control everything with his head. And that includes, he wanted to take classes at Sierra, and he was doing it. And but homework took him so long, and it would take him hours to finish one piece of work because everything he does is controlled with his head. And now at that time, like the teacher, kept like he had just finished the paper, he turned it in, and like the first thing the teacher said to him was like, okay, that's good, but you're still behind. And like that in the end he ended up dropping all his classes. And now it's just like, I don't know if he'll ever go back to Sierra. I think that was like, may have been his one hope to really get back into society and feel normal again and feel a part of, and all hope was crushed with that. So, just try to, I don't know, try not to jump to conclusion usually, that's all I got.
I'll take it. Judy?
Answer the question again.
What's one thing that busy, good people who we all like to think of ourselves as, and I truly believe we are, what can we do to make a positive difference?
I think those of us on this Zoom today continue to do what we're doing because we have all different types of interests. But my presumption is not only those of us on screen, but people who are listening all have a commitment to advancing the inclusion, equity, justice, rights of disabled people. And so keep doing what you're doing. And I would add one thing to it, and that is to try to bring other people along with you, to look at other groups that are doing similar work. Not everybody has, a lot of time, but I think what Victoria was also saying was, and really, Josh, you also, both of you were discussing how adversity impacts you. And, Victoria, you were saying that you have a lot of kids in your life and you're a very positive role model because you basically move forward living your life, studying, being a good mother, being a good, all the other things that you are. And Josh, for me, because I know neither of you, for me, Josh, you're a very sensitive person. You're really able to talk about your life and things that you did, like not wearing a seatbelt and the impact that's had on you, but you've taken it in a very positive way. And, you're talking now about this friend of yours and issues on campus. I would hope that one thing that you could do with your friend is use it as an example with your friend to speak to the college. Maybe he shouldn't be taking as many courses as he's taking so that he can complete what he needs to do. But I think one of the important points that you made was it was so difficult for him to get this paper in. And instead of looking at the paper and evaluating it for what it was, and then talking with him and looking at, are there alternative ways that me as a teacher, professor, could be learning about what you've learned? And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a written format. Like for some people, could they schedule time with the professor and have a discussion with them on a particular topic, things that this person and others would be able to do. So I think we're seeing that, for example, under the IDEA, that alternative ways of demonstrating knowledge. And I think the point, Josh, that you made was really, really sensitive. And I think that one of the important aspects of who you are is to try to help this young man or old man, I don't know who he is, not drop out, but use it as a learning experience about what needs to be done so that not only he can move forward, but that other people don't experience the same problem or discrimination.
Thank you. Victoria, Josh, Judy, everyone who is in our
Anya,
participant group. We have no excuse at Sierra College to not just be full speed ahead after today. This was fantastic. Your wisdom is so appreciated and so vast. Your experience is really, really important for us to hear. And we just thank you all from the bottoms of our hearts. There's a whole team of us with this radical inclusion group. And I know I speak for all of us when I say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. This was wonderful. And we hope to see lots of you. We'll be coming back. We'll have more events.
I gotta say one more thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go.
You live in a part of California where I would say most people are not radical. I think you need to look at the words you use. Because quite frankly, I don't think what you're saying is radical. It isn't. You're basically saying the law needs to be complied with, which is what you're talking about. We have many laws that address these issues, not just in disability. And I think we need to look at how we bring others into the discussion. And so sometimes words are really important because you want people to come and listen, and you don't want them to come with a bias that, oh, these are blah, blah, blah. Nobody on this call, everybody on this call, as far as I'm concerned, has very personal experiences and very important ideas of what needs to happen. And ultimately, if Sierra College is able to make the kinds of changes that you're envisioning, it will impact the community where the university is. And that's, I think, what we're all talking about. It's the discussion, it's come about because these are issues in higher education where you are going a number of days a week. But it really does impact the stores in the community, the religious institutions in the community, our ability to feel welcome in a restaurant, in a church, in a mosque, in a synagogue, whatever, in a market, in a flea market, whatever. And that's what we're trying to change. And I think that's what people need to understand. I think, focus groups in communities about what do people feel about disability? What do people who are acquiring disabilities feel about, things that the two of you have been discussing, Josh talking about entering a classroom and the experiences that you've had. These are not things that other people don't have, and they don't only have them at school. They may have them in elementary school and junior high school and high school. Obviously they do, on and on. So that's why I'm just saying, maybe that word is not necessarily the word that's going to get the majority of people in the community that you live in. But I do think the issues that you're talking about should be things that people will welcome participating in, because remember, in the US, 22% of the population have a disability. That's a lot of people, and visible and invisible, and they're in your communities. So that's my last comment.
Thank you. Blow the doors open, right?
Judy, can I just say thank you so much for just inspiring me and pulling these emotions out of me that I recently have kind of pushed down, but you brought them back out, and I'm so grateful for meeting you and having you be part of my life.
And vice versa. I really feel like this discussion has been as meaningful for me as for you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Now the women can go all cry.
Thank you, everyone. You. And thank you for joining.
Bye.
I hear you. I hear you on the radical inclusion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Like, why?
Yeah, no, you're right. And the whole point, inclusion is the emphasis, and
it's respect.
That is
respect. It's dignity. It's, we're not asking for things that other people don't want.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh.
I don't have to spend my life being thankful for handicapped toilets.
Exactly.
You gave me permission to
exactly
do that.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
All right, everybody. I need people's phone numbers. So if someone could send me an email with all your information. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you, Victoria and Josh.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for viewing our panel discussion featuring Judith Heumann. 2 clarifications concerning Sierra College and accessibility. First, the Learning Resource Center library at the Rockland campus was built in 1996 and is ADA compliant. Also, Sierra College promotes universal design and provides staff and faculty with training. Inclusion matters. Sierra College is committed to decreasing the equity gap for students with disabilities. We are working on harnessing critical tools to help us ensure that each student receives what they need to reach their academic and social potential. In addition, we aim to meet the spirit of belonging in the American Disability Act and create a welcoming, caring, and inclusive community. Thank you.